watching Dante's
Boxing Nation.
Boxing Nation.
And this is who Canelo wants to fight next, at least according to Eddie Hearn, if the Caleb Plant fight doesn't go down. Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So as you guys all know by now, the Caleb Plant negotiations have completely fallen apart, even though there's still a good chance that the fight can come to fruition. Only thing we know for a fact is Caleb Plant actually agreed to all of Canelo Alvarez's demands. Canelo, he wanted $40 million plus, he got it. Canelo, he didn't want the 3-fight deal to get the Caleb Plant fight. He got the 1-fight deal that he wanted. And that's why it's really important to make that note that Canelo, he got the 1-fight deal. Because I see Mexican fans in my comment section all the time trying to forge this narrative just to defend Canelo, saying, oh, the only reason the fight didn't happen is because they tried to force him to take this 3-fight deal, which that's not the case. Once again, it's already been confirmed that they offered him the 1-fight deal, and Canelo still turned it down. But real quick, before we get into the actual news, let's talk about the 3-fight deal for just a second. The 3-fight deal was an offer of over $100 million. Do you guys know what that means? That means Canelo Alvarez would have made more money than he had ever made in his life. You guys have to remember, when he was with DAZN, he was promised, what was it, $32 to $35 million per fight? But when it comes to the PBC deal, those fights would have been on pay-per-view. So he was already guaranteed $100 million. Now just imagine how much he would have made when the pay-per-view buys would have came in, especially if he was fighting against a live dog. Can you imagine Canelo versus Jamal Charlo in Texas on pay-per-view? Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez on pay-per-view? This man would have made probably over $200 million. Canelo stood to make at least $200 million in 3 fights, compared to an 11-fight deal where he was going to make $365 million. And I say going to because he never seen that 365 mil. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into today's news. So according to Eddie Hearn, if they can't get the Caleb Plant fight, the backup deal is Dimitri Bibble. Now Dimitri Bibble, according to him and his team, they stayed training for at least the last 3 or 4 weeks just in case they end up getting this Canelo Alvarez fight. But then all of a sudden, Canelo Alvarez, he raises the bar, and now he wants Dimitri Bivble to come down and wait. But the good news is Bivol has agreed to doing it. They have agreed to fighting at a catchweight, according to reports. The Athletic reported this. The only downside, or at least the only bad news for Canelo Alvarez, is they may have to move the date. And I say bad news for Canelo because obviously he wants to fight on Independence Day or the month of Independence Day in September. Because this is what Bivol's team said. They said we might have to move the date for Bivol to have enough time to travel, acclimate, and make weight. They're talking about making that new weight going down to a catchweight. Now listen, I'm sure it wouldn't surprise you that a lot of fans are now asking, why would Canelo Alvarez need Bivol to come down in weight when he went all the way up in weight to fight against Sergey Kovalev? And it's somewhat of a rhetorical question. This proves that Canelo Alvarez, he knew all along that Kovalev was the weakest link. And I don't blame him for testing out the waters there and saying, you know what, let me go ahead and go after the weakest champion there just to see how I feel fighting that light heavyweight. But he already tested the waters and he knocked out Kovalev, right? He was the aggressor in the fight. In fact, it looked like he was the natural light heavyweight. And it was Kovalev that was moving up in weight to fight someone, because that's the way Kovalev fought Canelo. Something else that doesn't make sense with Canelo. He did an interview with Brian Custer. Brian Custer, he told him, Bivol called you out. Would you take a Bivol fight? Canelo's exact answer was like, sure, why not? I will fight Bivol as long as he has a title. And keep in mind, Brian Custer said, if he came down to 168, would you fight him? And Canelo's answer is, as long as he has a title. How is Bivol going to have a title when you were planning on fighting against Caleb Plant to hold all the titles, right? You know, you Canelo Alvarez fans who never liked Floyd Mayweather at all, you always say that Canelo Alvarez is basically doing everything that Floyd Mayweather did, which that comparison makes no sense, because if that's the case, then you're supposed to hate Canelo Alvarez's guts just as much as you hated Floyd's. But we already know what time it is, don't we? Now, once again, with me saying that you guys always say, oh, Canelo's just doing the same things. Remember, guys, Floyd Mayweather moved up 5 weight classes. And when he fought at 154 the first time, he didn't even fight at a catchweight when he fought Oscar De La Hoya. To this day, Oscar De La Hoya was one of his toughest fights. One of his toughest fights. Oscar De La Hoya, he made the fight way more competitive at age 34 than Canelo Alvarez did at age 23. Now understand this, because I'm comparing moving up in weight. Floyd Mayweather, he had just moved to welterweight when he was about to fight De La Hoya. Because De La Hoya was the A side and he knew how bad Floyd wanted this fight, Oscar demanded that Floyd Mayweather move up to 154 when Floyd had just moved up to 147. Floyd still moved up to 154 to take the fight. And I remember this like it was yesterday. Floyd, he said at the press conference, I don't care if he tried to make me go to 168. I would still take the fight and I would still beat him. This is what Floyd Mayweather said. So how come Canelo can't do the same thing? When Canelo Alvarez is a natural power puncher. After Floyd moved up 5 weight classes, he really had no power. But he was still willing to face the biggest, the strongest guys at a higher weight class. Once again, remember, Floyd Mayweather, he moved up 5 weight classes. Now, while Canelo, he started his career at age 15 at 135, he actually campaigned at 154. And remember, when he was at 154, he rehydrated all the way up to like 180 pounds. So if you really think about it, Canelo Alvarez, him fighting at light heavyweight would only be his 4th weight class. And he wanted to be at a catchweight, when once again, we already know how strong this man is. We know he has a lot of power. On top of that, we know he rehydrates. He'll probably rehydrate to the same thing that Bivol will rehydrate to. It's not like the Floyd situation. When Floyd fought Canelo, Canelo was 15 to 20 pounds bigger than him the night of the fight. Do you guys know that Floyd Mayweather, he weighed 146 pounds the night of the fight? I mean, it's crazy because if you think about it, Canelo taking on Bivol is kind of like his version of when Floyd Mayweather took on the younger, bigger, stronger Canelo Alvarez. But that's still not 100% equivalent, because realistically, Canelo would have to move up to cruiserweight to really be compared to what Floyd Mayweather did. When you look at the fact that Floyd Mayweather was always at a massive weight disadvantage when he was fighting these bigger guys. I mean, just imagine if Canelo Alvarez was fighting someone 15 to 20 pounds naturally bigger than him, and they had real knockout power and skills on top of everything else. This is what Floyd Mayweather did when he fought Canelo and many other fighters. Because Oscar De La Hoya, Maidana, Carlos Baldomir, who had just beat the undisputed welterweight champion Zab Judah, all of these guys outweighed Floyd Mayweather by a minimum of 15 pounds. That's more than 2 weight classes bigger than Floyd Mayweather. So once again, how come Canelo Alvarez can't do the same thing? When this man has the type of equalizer that Floyd Mayweather didn't even have. At the end of the day, I know Canelo Alvarez, he is still trying his best to get this Caleb Plant fight. He knows it's the much easier fight. Once again, he doesn't care how much money Caleb wants. That's why it makes no sense when he says the black fighters, they want a payday. Oh, but when it comes to the white fighters, they can get all the money they want. All they have to do is ask for a payday. And Canelo, he's going to do them one better. He's going to give them a bonus on top of them asking for a payday. You know, speaking of white and European fighters, I've been giving Canelo Alvarez more credit than he actually deserves. Because I've been calling Canelo Alvarez pound for pound the best fighter in the world against European fighters. But that's not necessarily true. Because he hasn't even beat the best European fighters. Because we all know the odds will not look the same way if Canelo was going up against a Bivol or a better Biev, right? When Canelo is fighting against Yildirim, Rocky Fielding, Caleb Smith, BJ Saunders, and even Plant, you know, it's just looked at as business as usual. No one is looking at this like, oh man, this is going to be a real good fight. I wonder who's going to win. And this is why I love watching the Olympics so much. I'm addicted to watching the Olympics. Because when you watch the Olympics, you see more super fights in 2 weeks than you see in 2 years when it comes to boxing. Well, forget about 2 years. In 10 years when it comes to boxing. Especially when it comes to fighters like Canelo Alvarez. In fact, Canelo Alvarez, he does have one thing in common with the Olympics. Every 4 years, he takes on a real tough challenge. Let's see if we get this tough challenge anytime soon. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram. Contact them at 704-499-3471 and make sure you follow them on Instagram. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.